Hi everyone, James Egersdorff here, previewing game week 7 of the Fantasy Premier League. I'm going to take the usual format in the video this week, so I'm going to chat to you about game week 6 and how I did there, move on to talking a bit about game week 7, talk about the Leftfield watch list. So these are players that I think are worth getting on your radar that you might not have considered so far. I'm going to do FPL Doughnut, and we're going to talk about the captain options for the week. So game week 6... I'm still having a bit of a tricky start to the season, to be honest. So I got 50 points. I did do a -4, which took me to 46. Another red arrow, annoyingly. So I'm down to 900,000, just short of the top million, which is really not great. Very confident I can pull things round. It's my defence that's been carrying me. So Wan-Bissaka, Alonso, Robertson, all doing the damage this week. And it's my more attacking players, so particularly my midfield, that are letting me down. So I have players from, not just players that didn't score any goals, but players that played for 5 different teams that all didn't score. So Everton, Chelsea, Bournemouth were in there. Who else did I have that didn't score? Holberg came on for Southampton. So a whole bunch of teams that didn't score. So straight away you've got players playing for teams that don't score. Well, you can't expect to score many assists or goal points or bonus for people that aren't getting your goals. So I could look at that and be quite panicked. I mean, one of the strategies I took this week was I have taken out Sahar for the short term. That was more to do with I wanted to get the right balance into my team. I felt I didn't quite have, and this is more of a medium to long term thing, I just felt I hadn't quite set it up right. I was carrying people like Mkhitaryan, I was carrying Neves. Neves was eating too much into that budget midfielder option. He was 5'1", 5'2", so tying up best part of 0.8 million in him. I wanted to change. The Mendy injury was really annoying because I thought my team looked pretty good with him in the side and with Wan-Bissaka as the first reserve. And of course he gets injured. I decided to keep on to him. Maybe we'll find out closer to the deadline whether he's going to be able to play against Brighton. If he does play, that I'd prove that decision was really good one. Of course, if he doesn't play, that is a bit of a headache because I could probably have swapped him out instead of somebody else. But we are where we are, and I am putting a bit of perspective into this. So I could really pull my hair out and start questioning why things haven't quite gone right the last couple of weeks. But if you look at things like I backed Mane, Liverpool won 3-0. He didn't chip in with a goal nor an assist. You'd say on his form, what we've seen so far in this season, that's there's an element of misfortune there. I think I had a big element of misfortune. I did call it. I put Aguero as captain. I thought City would really put Cardiff to the sword, and they did. Of course, Aguero only got 6 points, which in a 5-0 win, you're kind of looking at it thinking, I'd be expecting maybe a few more points there. David Silva in a 5-0 win, he didn't even get on the pitch. I mean, that is pretty frustrating to say the least. And then, of course, Hazard, the man in form, Chelsea, one of the teams in form, and they get held to a 0-0 against West Ham. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think West Ham have kept a clean sheet as yet this season. So, hey, this is football. This is why we love the game. It's unpredictable. But you look at that set of results, you think, I need to put this into a bit of perspective and not push the panic button just yet and keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm really thinking that if you do make a start to the season that you're not as happy with as you'd like to be, it's a real simple thing for me. You just need a better plan. So you should always have a good plan anyway in FPL, and you just need to get back to the drawing board and plan even better for the coming game weeks. I'm going to be chatting to my Patreon guys a bit about that. Hi to all you guys, and thanks for you guys for supporting me on that platform. I'm going to talk a bit more about planning, and in my FPL masterclass it's all about me trying to pass on some wisdom to you from all my years and experience of playing FPL into making you a better manager. So the link's there if you want to check it out. Be great to have you on board. So game week 7, I think there's some interesting opportunities here. So obviously we could sit and talk about the top teams and how great they're going to do, which is a little bit boring and maybe not that interesting. So let's look outside of that. I think West Ham have a massive opportunity against a very unsettled Manchester United at the minute. I think there's room and very fair argument to say that they've got a problem there. They don't look in harmony. They don't look to all be on the same page. We've got the manager coming out and criticising people, and I think the games that I've watched Man United play this season, particularly the couple of times I've seen them win, they've not looked in control that you'd expect. Mourinho is someone who's big on game management and being in control of the game, and I think even if you go right back to that Leicester game at the start of the season, they kind of hobbled into a 2-0 lead, and then if you remember, Leicester got one back and United were really rocking, and I think that theme has recurred in many of the matches that they've played this season. So I do think West Ham, a win and a draw, they'd be really happy with away at Everton, home to Chelsea, 4 points. I think that looks like a really good return. I think most teams would bite your hand off if you offered them that. They've got a great opportunity at home to United on Saturday lunch to capitalise and go for a win there. I think it does hinge maybe a bit on Arnautovic as well, and from my understanding from what I've read, I think he was close for the Chelsea game and didn't quite make it. If he plays, they always look a different side. I think there's 3 teams that have favourable fixtures who really need a result, and 3 managers that really need a result, 3 sets of fans that really need a result, 3 sets of players that really need a result. I'm talking here Everton, they host Fulham, they're at home to Fulham. Newcastle play Leicester, and Cardiff, they're playing Burnley, and I think all those 3 teams in front of their home crowd really could do with a win. Everton have been very shaky recently. Newcastle, of course, have had a really tough start to the season. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. And Cardiff, Burnley at home with respect to Burnley, but they're the games that as a promoted side you're looking at and you're thinking we need to pick up some points here, at least a draw, if not really. If you're Cardiff, I think you need to be going for a win. So coming to Newcastle, a good pal of mine, Tony, hey Tony, he's a big Newcastle fan, and I was chatting to him the other day, and he made a really valid point that when you think about it, there's a lot of logic in what he's saying. So to most football fans, you look at the league table and Newcastle are right down there at the bottom, and you think, crikey, they've had an awful start to the season. But what Tony was saying was, if you actually look at the results, so they've played 4 of the top teams. So who they played? They played Chelsea, they played down at Arsenal, I think, didn't they? Oh, they played Arsenal at home, sorry. They played away at City, and it was either on Spurs, I can't remember, but they've played 4 really tough games. And yes, they've lost each of those games. They've lost them all 2-1, which, considering that this is a team being criticised for a lack of goals, they've managed to score against all those top teams. All right, they've only scored 1 goal, but they've not been completely torn apart. They've not been heavily beaten. Yes, all right, their strategy in those games was a little bit negative, but they've remained in the game and they've only lost by a goal, a solitary goal. They've also been away to Cardiff, who, if I remember, that was their first ever home game back in the Premier League early in the season. They've been away to Palace, and in both those games they've drawn 0-0. In the Cardiff game they missed a last minute penalty, so even if you take that out the equation, they've drawn 2 away games 0-0, and I think if you're Newcastle, you'd probably be looking to pick up draws in your away games. So they've delivered on both those occasions. So when you actually look at it and consider all the factors around who they're playing and what the actual outcomes in the matches have been, what Tony was saying was that he didn't actually think it was that bad a start. It's not a total disaster. It looks worse than it is. But what the real test for them now is they've got this run of games. They play Leicester and then they're away at United, which I know isn't great. But then after that, their run of games is really favourable. So you're looking at that Leicester game on Saturday thinking this is really big, because they win that, maybe nick a point again at Old Trafford for the reasons I talked about with West Ham. And then they've got this great run of games. They could easily be up there in mid-table in a few weeks, and we look back and nobody really remembers the fact they were down at the bottom. So that brings me on quite nicely to Leftfield watch list options. So I'm looking at, I think the Newcastle defence could be a secret bargain that maybe not many people have actually thought about. And way back when I did my wildcard, actually, I was looking at people like, and this was a few game weeks ago, I was looking at people like Paul Doughnut. He's the club captain. They've brought in Fernandez, who, despite playing for Swansea, I always thought looked quite steady, and he's available at 4.4. So there's a couple of possible defensive options there that might come good. I think in midfield, I know he was playing in front of Gareth Southgate, and he played probably the best he'd played for years. He looked like the player he was at Tottenham, and this was Aaron Lennon on Saturday. Scored a whole bunch of points, which I don't think anybody in FPL's got Aaron, sadly. I checked him out, and he's available at 5 million. So he's played every match this season. He's played 90 minutes. Burnley have had this challenge with the European thing that's not going to be a problem anymore. They also got beat in the Carabao Cup last night, so that sees them freed up for the next few weeks to concentrate on the Premier League. The fixtures, they are a bit up and down, but here's a guy who has pedigree in the FPL. He was an international player. He seems to be enjoying his football again. I think he had a couple of years a little bit in the wilderness with some issues and problems off the field that hopefully is addressed now. And Sean Dyche, as we know, is a great man manager, and looks like he's got this guy back firing. So I'd keep Lennon on the radar if you're looking for a bargain. And another player that he has contributed some goals this season. He doesn't have a great game this week. He's away at Man City, but has some great fixtures coming up moving forward. He's been put on penalties. Might present a cheaper option to people like Mitrovic, who's creeping up in price, and that's Glenn Murray. So if you look at Brighton's fixtures on the horizon, I talked about Knockaert last week, and he went and got himself a goal. I think Glenn Murray could be a good forward option. He's available at 6.5. That might represent some good value in the next few weeks. That brings us on to FPL Doughnut of the week, and I'm trying to, as best I can. Well, I shouldn't want to, because my team should all be doing really good, but when they're not, I think it makes sense to pick somebody who's in my team. And the award this week goes to a player who returned a very disappointing 2 points last week and drew a little bit of constructive criticism from his manager. He come out the week before and criticised some of the refereeing decisions that went against him in, quite frankly, a bizarre interview on Match of the Day. Anybody else who has Wilfred Zaha will be feeling my pain. If you saw the highlights, there's a very peculiar passage of play where he went down the wing and you could see the defender coming in for a slide tackle, and he quite frankly just got out the way and then started bemoaning the linesman, and even the commentator on Match of the Day couldn't understand what the problem was and why Zaha just wasn't getting on with the game. So Zaha gets Doughnut of the week, and a big firm message from me to sort your ideas out, Wilf, and get yourself firing again. Otherwise, I think there's going to be some wholesales of Mr. Zaha from FPL managers. And then finally, this week, the captain choice. Not really very exciting. Chelsea and Liverpool are playing each other, so that kind of ties up Hazard and Salah a little bit unpredictable as to where that option might be. I think if you do have those players, you've always got half a chance, haven't you? They're two world-class players. I think the obvious one is Aguero, home to Brighton. He was rested for the Carabao Cup midweek. I mean, I think that's a bit of a banker. And likewise, if you do have him, I know not many of us do quite yet, Mr. Kane, is he away at Huddersfield? And he I remember last season he scored really well there. I think he got a couple of goals and got a decent score. He got his penalty down at Brighton. Not on amazing form, but he could be coming into form. He's got a couple of good fixtures. I think they play Cardiff next. So if you do have Kane and you're looking at making up some ground, then maybe he could be a good option for you to have a think about. So, hope that's been enjoyable. Hope you're enjoying the videos. Thank you all for tuning in and for watching. We've got game week 8 next week. We've got the Champions League games again in the week. So if you've got a transfer in mind, definitely worth hanging fire if you can until those games have been completed. And go and have a great game week 7. And I'll catch you all next week. Cheers, everybody.